Hello patron and welcome back to my life. Today I want to talk about managing feedback, and specifically when it comes to like writers groups online and how they are usually terrible at specific critiques. Now don't get me wrong, I've made public videos in the past talking about how to be in a writer critique group and everything. Those points are still very valid, but there is also a lot that you have to watch out for when getting critiques from other writers. Every writer out there has their own unique thing, style, and their own considerations, their own ways that they think about writing and the way that it should be done. And all these things basically amount to bias, and as with most humans, writers are really terrible at recognizing our own bias. I try to be as self-aware of it as I can be, but I know that I'm not perfect about it. One example is that I hate when people say a couple phones, a couple people. It's a couple of people. That just drives me crazy. But also, a couple people is totally common usage these days. And it's not, you can, I know analytically that you can write that way. It's fine, and I'm just being super prescriptive. But when somebody has this sort of bias and they don't recognize it for themselves, they will tend to push that bias on you, the writer whose work they are critiquing. You should still very much be part of writer groups, but when you are receiving critique, you should place more stock in general critique than in like specific notes on one thing that you ask about. So for example, not too long ago on the Discord server, somebody posted a sample of writing and asked whether or not like anyone in the group had any specific critiques on it, and it was basically just one paragraph taken out of context from their work. And they wanted to know like if this certain sentence should be restructured, or if there was anything else that people, you know, thought that should be fixed about this paragraph. And this happens a lot in writer groups. People will post one sentence and be like, how's this sentence? And there will be lots of answers posted. There will be lots of advice given. But the truth is, it's really hard to get anything useful from that feedback. One sentence or one paragraph or one page or one chapter cannot be effectively critiqued out of context. And anybody who says that it can is displaying their own bias. They are being overly prescriptive. They are saying everything must be done this way. The more effective way to edit and give helpful feedback is to look at the entire work, a body of the writer's work, or, you know, at least a complete book or a complete short story or novella or whatever. Because without that, you can't effectively evaluate whether something is part of someone's style or if it is a legitimate error. Because there are hard and fast rules, like punctuation works a certain way and everything like that, even though sometimes even punctuation can be very malleable. But a lot of things can be forgiven for the sake of style. And the only two ways to critique someone's style is, one, if it makes the reading experience harder on the reader, you never want to do that. And two, if it's inconsistent. Like, you can just completely eliminate the Oxford comma from your writing if you want to. A lot of people, like, I don't think you should, but you can. But you cannot use the Oxford comma here and then not use it there. And so, you know, when somebody posts one sentence or a paragraph or something like that, it's not helpful for somebody to say you should put an Oxford comma there, because if the person never uses the Oxford comma in the entire rest of their work, that critique is wrong. I think I've talked about the note behind the note maybe a billion times, but we're just going to refresh ourselves really quick. The phrase "the note behind the note" comes from screenwriting, and specifically like the Hollywood screenwriting atmosphere where people write movies and TV shows, and you get lots of producer feedback. And so a producer might write back, on page 55 this scene is boring and you should do blah. And the rule is that when somebody says there's something wrong with part of your script, they're usually right. When they tell you how to fix it, they're usually wrong. It is a note out of context. It is a note that doesn't, you know, integrate with everything else that you're doing, because it's a different person who is going to think of a different solution than you, the writer, who knows your work better than anybody else. And so, you know, like lots of Hollywood screenwriters that I've talked to and seen at conventions and everything like that, they talk about having to perfect the skill of rewriting that scene, yes, but not making the change that the producer suggested, because it's probably a really bad change. And then you just send it back to the producer and you say, okay, I rewrote that, totally see what you're saying, I rewrote that scene. And you just just don't even mention that you didn't do what they told you to do because it was a dumb idea. Same thing applies to writers groups and specific critiques. You should just be real super wary of anybody who gives you a specific critique if you post like one tiny sample of a larger work. And obviously, you know, even this advice has a whole lot of leeway. Like, I can pick up a book and read the first page and be like, boy, this person just does not know how to write. Like, if you hear from somebody or you ask somebody for feedback and they say, listen, I couldn't read past the first chapter because this book needs a lot of work, that doesn't mean they're necessarily wrong, and you can't just go, well, I can actually do whatever I want because it's style. As with everything else, you have to apply this advice with some intelligence, but you just should know that if in general you got your very basic writing chops together, you're not going to get any super helpful feedback on one sentence or one paragraph. It just doesn't work. So that's it for this week's Writer Wednesday. As always, if there's something you want me to talk about in the Wednesday videos, let me know in the comments on Patreon, not on YouTube. Gonna make a Patreon post about this very soon, but there's going to be some changes coming to Writer Wednesday in the near future. Well, near future, next month. So keep an eye out for that. It's gonna be a text post explaining how it's going to work, and I really need your feedback on that one. But if you want future Writer Wednesday video topics, post them on the Patreon, not in the YouTube comments. Patron, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, as always, for your incredible support, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!